Software historically has been quite a messy business because you kind of say, I'm going to do this piece of work in 6 months, and then 6 months later, you discover that you're only halfway through it, and that all of your assumptions are wrong, and everyone's upset, and it's a big mess. So I guess Agile and Scrum came out of a desire to make that whole process a lot more transparent and a lot more kind of trackable, and also giving a lot more flexibility to kind of change path along the way.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is basically that you break the requirements of the project down into as small a chunk as possible, and that's called a story. And then you kind of gather together a bunch of stories, and that's into a 2-week period of work that's called a sprint or an iteration. And then your team kind of work through that and see how far they get through that sprint. And then after a few sprints, you get a good idea of how many stories you can complete. Mm-hmm. Obviously, each story has a level of complexity. Right. It's given a number of points, and you add those number of points up, and you get a velocity for your team. So what that means is that every 2 weeks you've got a checkpoint. You do a showcase where you can show this is our progress, because each story should be, from a user's perspective, a functionally complete piece of work. So you should be able to show that you've gone from there to there, and this is what we've done, and get the feedback. And if the product owners or the stakeholders aren't happy, they've got the opportunity to kind of change direction a little bit.
Yeah.
Going forward. So what that means for developers and feedback is that every day they're kind of standing together, they're talking about the work they're going to do that day. Every 2 weeks they're having a review of their progress. So you're getting kind of a constant kind of feedback loop. Right. Of how you're going. You can see if one person's kind of struggling with their stories and nobody else is, there's a bit of feedback there about that person, how they're kind of facing the project.
Yeah.
If you've got someone that's kind of vocal and talking at stand-ups and getting really passionate about it, getting a bit of feedback there about what kind of, what they enjoy.
Yeah, it really sort of narrows that whole loop. If I think of performance, if you think of how you can develop performance, there's really 2 key ingredients, I think, and that is, one is the expectations of setting out the expectations in the first place, and then that feedback mechanism or feedback loop, and that's a sort of continuous cycle. And Scrum sort of seems to be almost a perfect example of that, because you've got the expectations come in the form of a story, in the form of a user story, that's given to the developer, so they know exactly what the expectations are. It's a really well written expectation, and then every day they get that feedback loop, and every fortnight at the end of the sprint they have the retrospectives that they talk about process improvements and maybe even personal improvements again.